consulting for, I was able to go ahead and hire him to redo my pool deck. And he did it on his own because of the whole restrictions of having just one person or two people working for you. He took his time, and it took him 2 weeks to redo my whole deck, something that I've been wanting to do for the past 3 years. And
we do this. And then when I met Dana and I watched Dana, who is a master at working with horses, I thought, there it is. There it is. That's how we do this. So Dana and I, started kind of, feeling that out and doing even more research, and realizing that Dana was a vet gave us a nice in to how we would do that. But then after a few months, I called Roger. He's like, how's it going out there? I said, great. We're going to run a horse ranch. And I get dead silence on the other end of that phone. Nothing. It was just like, huh. And finally he says, a horse ranch? I said, well, an equine therapy program. He's like, But he allowed us to go down that road. He allowed us to explore that. And finally convinced him last November to come out and see it. I kept telling him, Roger, you won't understand it until you see it. And I don't know, Raj, did it make a difference once you saw it?
There's no question about that. There's no question about it. It's a place that heals. And it's not without notice, and I want to point this out, that it was a visionary of two women entrepreneurs, because so much of how we can build businesses, both for the women in the class as well as the men in the class, is through that level of caring, because that fundamentally is what we do as entrepreneurs, is we come up with opportunities and ideas, but it has to provide for somebody, it has to care for somebody, it has to give them opportunity for growth and believing, and that's what I think what is so unique about the Blue Sky Ranch and both of these entrepreneurs is there's no easy trip here, right? There's lots of times in which, and Dana, please reflect on this, in which, if you think about it, there's lots of things one could do in their life that could have been a lot easier, right? So talk a little bit about, just what your day looks like, in the world of an entrepreneur running and developing opportunities through equine therapy.
Well, I actually wrote down some notes, if you don't mind me rolling through these real quick. It's just some of the challenge as a woman entrepreneur, some of the things that we have to deal with and be flexible with. So one of the things I wrote down is remain true to yourself and finding your own voice. You made it where you are and you deserve it. So oftentimes I find it's difficult for me to accept praise. So Bert will say, oh, she's this wonderful horsewoman. And I'm like, oh, I'm okay. It's the horse. Well, no, it's not. It is my gift, and I accept that, and I'm going to roll with that. So it's that self-doubt really, really, really creeps in, and know that you got where you are because you deserve it. Another point I wrote was it's limited access to funding has been a challenge for us. One of the things we've done is create relationships with potential funders. So a lot of our parents of our children, our youth group kids, have helped us immensely. Yes. We've tried to network with other nonprofits in town. The Raton Humane Society, we're huge supporters of them. We'll often go and do free horse rides for those guys. So it's creating those relationships with others in town with similar interests and passions. Building a great business plan and team. Of course, I have the best team with Bert and Roger, but having those people around you to inspire, question. We also like to encourage other women to forge ahead, empower others, support other women entrepreneurs. We have a female farrier. We have, we encourage that. We like to work with other women and men as well. I'm not saying we push them out, but another thing I wrote down is earning respect. we're often dismissed with our ideas, especially I know here in Raton we talked about cultural differences. It's very strong Hispanic culture here, and you have to understand where you're going and that culture, before you start charging ahead, saving lives. Of course, we talked about embracing flexibility, being able to tackle those challenges, tackle those things that come up, and then continue moving forward. Let's see, I said building a great team and support network. There's a lack of mentors for female entrepreneurs. So what I've found is network. Facebook is a great one. There's women business forums. There's, I'm sure, millions of other places that you can meet and discuss and talk with others. We have a huge volunteer support base of professionals of all different kinds.
Yes.
Who assist us in numerous ways, volunteering. Be specific about what you need from people. If you don't ask, you won't get.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone's offering their time or take it and give them something to do. And then, you're pulling them in, you're pulling those people into what you're doing and your passion. Another thing I wrote, balancing business and family life. I'm a single mom. I'm lucky my daughter's old enough, 15 years old at this point. I'm able to really jump ahead with the business, but moms with younger children, finding that balance, finding that mental health time, that respite for yourself. I was working 2 jobs at one time and being a single mom. So it's been tough, but you can do it, and just don't lose sight of your vision. Another point I wrote, and I'm finishing up here quick, failure. Every business fails. You have to work through your self-doubt. You have to work through those things that come up. Again, blessed are the flexible, for they shall not get bent out of shape. I love that saying, and I apply it to my life every day. Take those things as teaching moments, take in feedback, learn to make changes. The road to success is paved with losses, mishaps, and mistakes. It can still take you where you want to go. Don't lose sight of your ultimate vision.
Yes. Yeah. And those are all things that, whether or not they were positives for us or they were things that we learned after something hard happened. One of the downfalls of working with so many animals is that animals are fragile, and
Especially horses.
Horses, they are strong and they are fast, but man, their bones snap in a heartbeat and things happen. They are susceptible to all kinds of diseases and accidents, mishaps. So recently, when we obtained the 2 burros out of Colorado, one of them was pregnant. And we were very excited because Dana and I had always said no babies at the ranch just because they're so hard. But we decided, we worked with some ladies in Colorado and made the decision to go ahead and take the pregnant burro. And we were so stoked because we were finally going to have this beautiful baby.
Yes.
And we waited for almost 2 months before that baby was born. And he was born with an abnormality and only lived for 6 days. And,
the whole team felt that one. So that was hard for all of us to suck up and move on.
Yeah, So, that's not the first death we've had. But we had a lot of decisions to make when we started the youth group program about how we were going to deal with death. And we talked with the parents about how they felt about that. And so when possible, we allow the kids to come in prior to euthanizing our animals and spend some time with them. They get to say goodbye to them. And then they're not on site when the actual euthanasia occurs. So you don't typically think of that in equine therapy. How are you going to handle the death of an animal? And yet we've handled that multiple times. But now we have a pretty awesome ritual around it. And, you know, how those are the kinds of off the wall things that happen when you suddenly have to make decisions. Decisions you make when a kid comes off a horse,
Yes.
you know. Most of the time, parents are not on site. They're gone. And of course, we have liability waivers, and we have an incredible equine liability law in New Mexico, which protects us. But when it comes to horseback riding, it's not if, it's when you fall off the first time. And it's happened. Virtually every kid has come off a horse at some point. And we remind parents almost every week about their liability that they've signed over. But those have looked very different. And we have had children who needed to go to the hospital, but none of them were seriously injured. And, we work very hard on how to come off a horse and all of those things. So it's, the liability in this area can be huge because horses are big and horses can be very dangerous. But they are also the most amazing animals. And we work very hard to minimize risk every single day. So it's kind of amazing how much time we spend doing that.
So since all of you had to take my ethics course, which is required, hopefully it was enjoyable and and that kind of stuff. One of the things I think that ties this together, that spirals this conversation together, is how important it is for women to find their voice. So reflecting back, that's Carol Gilligan and her ethics of care. And I'm saying that both for the women entrepreneurs here and as well as the men. When you're building an entrepreneurial team, it's really critical to have those different voices speaking. What you're seeing in both Dana and Bert is building a company around relationships and building an enterprise around caring. One of the things, and let me also let you know that they didn't let me on a horse. Which was both probably their recognition of my inabilities as well as my wife's, prayers. But they are magnificent animals. But they taught me something else when I was out there, and that is, they taught me that this is a large animal. This is not, these aren't like, puppies and and that kind of stuff. These are large animals. These are. And they have to want to let you ride them.
Yes.
And so it's that connection of relationship building that Dana and Bert and the students and the children and the women and the men have developed. And what a powerful way to see it happening between an animal that really could just buck you at any time and throw you right out.
You got that right.
Oh, yes.
Okay? Has complete ability just to flip you right off of, and you're coming 6 feet out and 8 feet in the air and crashing to the ground. To develop a relationship. And how does that apply, and how can that apply to us as entrepreneurs, as business developers, between human beings?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And we need to spend more time doing that.
Yes.
We need to be more effectual on not demanding things from each other in a business sense, but looking for the partnerships and the relationships that move forward. So, just take a few minutes, Dana, and talk about how you build relationships with the horses.
Well, it probably looks like nothing to other people, but it's hard to explain, Roger. But I guess we're learning to communicate with each other, and I know that sounds weird, but horse is doing it through body communication, and I'm doing it through reading that. And then it's hard to explain.
So, in my job, I worked with individuals who are in crises, and my background is in psychology, and I am a diehard behaviorist. So I believe in reading behavior. That's what I do. And then, responding in a way that hopefully reduces crisis and increases quality of life. And that's what Dana employs when she's working with the horses. So we have, this communication, and it's incredibly subtle because, as most of us know, we are good at recognizing the faces of people who are in the same culture and race as we are. We are not as good at doing that in other cultures and other races. So to learn the very subtle body and facial features of a horse takes a lot of time spent just engaging with that horse. And that's what Dana does she's done it for years and years and years. So yes, you have a whole communication relationship. And what the horse is learning is that she's consistent. She is going to do what she does in sequential order over and over and over again. And there's a trust that's developed. It's not a trust of, like we think of trusting each other. I'm not going to lie to you. It's like a trust that says I'm not going to change what I do when I'm with you. So I spend a lot of time sitting on the fence watching this, and it is phenomenal to see that interaction. And with our newest Mustang, I get to go in that ring and work with a Mustang that was not treated especially well when they came in from the wild. So there's a lot of undoing. But that's really what Dana does when she's working with those horses, is she's communicating with them. And it's something that once we get our YouTube channel up and we'll have lots of video of her, we will be able to show you. But I always tell the kids when they're watching, it's like, what you need to watch is, Dana always wears a baseball cap when she's training. I'm like, you watch the bill of that hat, because it's going to change. It's going to move. And it moves very slightly, but it says everything to that horse. So,
So it's using my body and my energy and to convey to the horse, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no words.
It
It's
does make
just.
sense. And the reason why I love this conversation is because the theory. I mean, Burke and I just have these ongoing intellectual theories about behaviorism, and I want to throw credit to where she is. She actually worked for a little while. I think I'm correct on with B.F. Skinner, sort of the foundational thinking of operant conditioning after Pavlov and his famous dog experiment. But the one thing that I think is missing is what you're hearing here. It's not just about behaviorism. It's not just about applying rewards,
right,
and taking away rewards, right?
Right.
Which is what you learn a lot in your business classes. The earlier conversation you're talking about in terms of the gaming theory is really just the application of rewards. It has no cognition to it. It's just a matter of applying the right rewards at the right time, etc. And unfortunately, we spend too much time in business doing that and not realizing there's another fundamental part of business, and that is people's interpretation. From a theoretical basis, we can use Bandura as an example of the stimulus cognitions. People think about it, interpret it, feel it intuitively, and then respond. And I want you to be tuned enough that that's what's happening, and it's between Dana and a horse.
Mm-hmm.
There's thinking going on. There's emotion going on.
Mm-hmm.
There's passion going on in building that relationship, so that the horse is willing to be a partner.
Yes.
And if we can do that, and she does it, and she's really good at it with a horse, why aren't we doing that in our businesses?
Well, and that's the beauty of horses, Roger. They translate to your human relationships as well, and that's like part of the beautiful learning portion of it. Everything you do with horses can be done with people. And I'm a very introvert, very socially awkward a little bit when it gets to big groups. So horses, for me, have been a bridge to people. Being able to form relationships, keep those relationships, build on those relationships. So it's not just the horse, it's what the horse has done to me and myself, and the way I look at things and the way I perceive things, and my energy. And I mean, I could go on and on about the things they've taught me, and that's what we're trying to teach others. So those horse relationships the kids are learning will transfer to the human relationships that they're in.
Well, I kind of want to. I want to address Emerson's question here about it is a testosterone. New Mexico itself is testosterone heavy, and it has a lot to do with the cultures that were here long before the Puritans got here. So to understand the history of New Mexico involves many indigenous tribes that occupied the Southwest, as well as the conquistadors coming in from Spain and coming up through Mexico, and all of those remaining as a part of Mexico until the late 1800s. New Mexico itself became a territory in 1880, belonging to the United States, but it was always occupied by the indigenous people and people who were descendants of both the Spaniards and people who came up through Mexico. And all of those cultures tend to be mostly male dominated. So as white people began to come out west, New Mexico was not an ideal place to come because we were primarily a desert. But we were a great place to go through. If you wanted to avoid the high Sierras and taking your wagon train up into San Francisco, then you could come through the Santa Fe Trail. And in fact, our ranch is part of the property is on the actual Santa Fe Trail. So people came through, but most people didn't stay. So those that did, in concert with the individuals who are already here, kind of created the culture of New Mexico. So for hundreds and hundreds of years, you have seen that very male-dominated Hispanic cultural impact. And, it encompasses most of New Mexico anyway. And now it's beginning to change. Our last two governors have been female. Our current governor is female and non-Hispanic. So that's the first time that's ever happened. So I think that we deal with that challenge in a way that we have created the relationships with men in power. We very much understand how that culture works and how you find your place in that. There's times we've had to sacrifice things. There's a pasture that while we lease it, it's in the city limits, and we cannot have livestock in those city limits. And our city council and our mayor are males. So we have never been able to challenge anyone to allow our horses to just graze in those beautiful grassy 12 acres. But we also knew that we can't begin to challenge it.
Not yet.
Not yet. So we have to keep giving to their kids or their children who are relatives of them before at some point somebody's going to recognize that maybe it's okay that we use those 12 acres. And those 12 acres just sit there, growing grass and weeds. But, there's a sacrifice that we had to make because of the male culture in this town. And then we have, I think it's Delilah. You want to tell us a story?
Actually, yeah, I was going to share just a cute personal story. Here in New Windsor, it's pretty much let's just say we had some busy roads here, and 207 is the major where we have our local airport, and they recently made it like an international, very busy road off of one of the major military bases. Anyway, one night we're driving, and I have my daughter and my nieces in the car. It's pretty late, dark, and as I'm driving down this road, it just amazed me that my headlights, what comes towards me is a horse on this major. The horse is just coming out of nowhere, and all I could see was like this horse coming towards me, and all I can do, because I've taken my daughter to one of the local horse ranges for some training there, right, horseback riding. And I knew that the concern was that this is a busy road and this horse is just coming at me.
Definitely.
So all I can do is start blinking my lights. The horse stops directly in front of me, and I know that there's oncoming traffic. So I just left my car there, flashing the lights to try to make sure that that this horse doesn't get hit, especially because it's only a two-way road. Anyhow, the horse turns around, leaves, and there's no cars are coming, and they start slowing down. So I knew I did my part. But now my next concern was to call the local police. And as I called, and I knew that it was going to be a strange story. So when they asked me what was going on, I'm like, you're not going to believe this, but I mean, I'm not kidding. There's a horse over there. And the guy's laughing at me, the person on the phone, and I had to share this because, the concern that this horse is just running around and you just don't find this out of nowhere. And I spent the next day looking for the place of where could this horse have gone to, up and down this road. But I just had to share that because I think you're doing I think that's great what you're doing. I'm a vet myself, Dana.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you for your service.
So thank you. But I think you're awesome. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
That was
Well,
Anybody else have any questions too? Did
Yeah.
you want to insert or?
we can talk a little bit about the. Go ahead.
Erica's got a question.
Go ahead, Erica. No, you're fine.
Do you guys have like any financing like needs or requests? Like, have you financed anything like in the past where, because you guys are eligible for like special loans, being that you're minority or the women, and you're also a non-for-profit?
We'll take all the help you got, Erica. We will.
Well, I'm not sure like how it is in your state, but in New York we have the Small Business Association, and they have a specific minority women's program that is geared towards small businesses, especially startup businesses that are women controlled or owned. And I believe the percentage is like 60% has to be a woman minority owned business. So
And-
you might want to check.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did check into that. And in New Mexico, there are so many small businesses. We are dominated by small businesses in New Mexico. So one of the groups that we work with is actually out of Colorado, and they are a not-for-profit called Mount Carmel. And Mount Carmel was started by a guy who owns 17 Ford dealerships in southern Colorado and northern New Mexico. So what we've done is they offer huge services to veterans, including financial aid, helping veterans.
Full spectrum health. I mean, they're wonderful service.
They are amazing. And so in partnership with them, what we're looking at prior to coronavirus was getting the dealerships involved in, producing some funding from each dealership that would specifically go to funding the veterans programs. But in doing that, we also work with, they have a bank that they work with who does all of the financial assistance and financial information for free for veterans. So we had a meeting scheduled with them. Unfortunately, everybody had to cancel that, but we'll get it rescheduled at some point. But yes, I have looked at all of those, and we have applied for all of them. Everything I can find, I'm applying for. I now know our EIN by heart. I can just rip that out. So I spend at least 3 hours a day filling out applications now, and of course everything is so slow in the response, but also overwhelming the systems. And when I got to be honest, when I see things like these restaurant chains who are returning $20 million to the grants that were supposed to come to small businesses, it kind of,
Yeah,
hurts because we can't even get an answer from them.
we'd take 100,000.
Yeah, we're fine with $100,000. That could work.
Last us a couple of years.
It actually costs us about just over $5,000 a month to run this ranch. Dana is a contractor to the ranch, so she is not an actual employee. But when you look at the expenses that we incur across over a given year, we get a farrier out about every 6 weeks. And fortunately now our farrier volunteers all her time. So usually a farrier runs between $35 and $40 a horse. So with, 16 equines that need farrier services, that definitely added up. We have vet bills. And over the course of this last year, our vet bills, we use a mobile vet and she has no clinic or anything. So she had to come out for one of our horses. She came out every single day for between 2 and 4 hours a day, 14 straight days, and only charged us $4,000. So that was a godsend for us. Normally, even in Raton, that would have been upwards of $25,000. So, those are things that we have to build in.
Emerson has a question. Our therapy services are not free. What we do free is the community programs. So the youth groups are free, the women's group is free, and the veterans group would be free. So our mission is that every person who wants to ride a horse should have that opportunity. And we run those community programs for that purpose as well. But we will be charging for the therapeutic services and the equine assisted services that we offer.
And we charge their insurance. We don't charge them directly.
Right.
I mean, people could pay out of pocket, but we ensure that if you want to come, we are in the process of being able to bill the VA. We can bill Medicaid and things like that. So we're looking at billing insurances for people, not the people themselves.
Yeah.
So-
And the community programs are where we go free with everything. We don't charge for the kids or the
women's group.
special
Yeah.
groups. So
Yep.
So when you get so you can see that this there's a business you're running. So
Yes.
So even if it's not for profit, I think it's important to recognize is that all that really is a tax designation system, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean everything doesn't have a cost to it. You have to apply for those costs. You have to run it as a business. It just means at the end of it, you're not redistributing profit to shareholders, right?
Right.
mm-hmm.
And that's realistic. I mean, people have sort of a complete different view of what not-for-profit is. Sometimes where you think, oh, everything is this, everything is that, everything's free, etc. But it is a business, and it's a complicated business to operate. I think it's a great place to be. It's a good area to be in.